Welcome back to part 3 of our Brew with Us with Thornbridge. In this episode, we meet Ben Wood, a technical brewer, to explore a piece of brewing heritage that Thornbridge rescued, the Burton Union. Then we head south to visit Richard from Wheatlow Brewery, an avid homebrewer who's built his own homebrew version and run some fascinating experiments. Stick around, this one's special.
We are here at Thornbridge. We've just done a complete brewery tour, all to do with Jaipur, obviously celebrating its 20th birthday this year. But we couldn't not have a full rundown on this amazing piece of kit. Who better to explain than Ben, the technical brewer here at Thornbridge. Let's hear a little bit about the history of the union.
So the Burton Union was invented, as people say, in about the early 1800s, 1838. A guy named Paul Walker patented it. At that point, there were lots of different versions. It might not have been the first, but it's the first that actually had a patent that people can point back to.
Yeah.
Victorian innovation. It was essentially made to help the barrels top up. They used to have lots of barrels on the floor. It'd be someone's job to top them up with a jug. You're probably the youngest person that no one liked that sent around to do that job. And also they had issues with hygiene and yeast. So the Burton Union is great for making clean yeast that they can reuse. Also looks after itself, slightly automated in terms of the barrel top up because of the way it works. And it was a bit of a revelation back then as a new way of brewing. It kind of established itself in Burton because in kind of the middle 1800s, stout and porter became a bit less popular, and pale beer became a bit more to the front. Lots of London breweries would then move up to Burton. There was plenty of land available in Burton, there wasn't in London, so Burton Unions take up a great deal of space. So there was lots of satellite breweries of London brewers that would move to Burton, put these unions in, and brew on them to make pale ales. Obviously the water there was perfect for it before RO or anything like that, and it kind of was a big bubble up until maybe the end of the 1800s when there might have been 18,000 union barrels in use.
17 or 18,000 union barrels.
I think Bass probably had the most. They had 7,000 or 8,000. And then by the early 1900s, mid 1900s, it completely collapsed. The number of breweries had probably halved from 30 to 10, 15. And then it's kind of decreased ever since then. Bass closed theirs down in the early 80s. Marston's, where we got our Burton Union from, actually reinvested in it in the early 90s, which is where these barrels are from. But then obviously at the start of this year, they deemed it not viable anymore, and it was essentially going to cease to exist. They were the last sets in the world. So we've been really lucky to take 6 barrels and preserve that brewing tradition.
This bit of history here, and now people are able to drink the beer that's being produced on this union, actually is been a really interesting experiment for you, I guess. Being able to see the quality of the beer and the differences of the beer that comes off of brewing it in this way. Yeah,
absolutely. There's a bit of a curse and a pleasure between it, because you want to make the best beer you possibly can, and usually in breweries like these, that's all about controlling temperature, controlling yeast counts, controlling all these different things. And then someone gives you 6 barrels and says, chuck some wort in it, and look, it looks nice.
Let it go.
Let it go. The compromise is always, how much do you automate it? How much do you change it to make beer consistently? But then how far away from the essence of the Burton Union does that take you? You keep improving it, you're going to end up with a stainless steel lined barrel with then what's the point? You've got to make it repeatable, consistent quality, which is what we do at Thornbridge, but not too far that it becomes sterile and you lose the tradition of the union. So finding which bits to play with has been good fun.
Can you give us a brief rundown of exactly how it works?
Absolutely, yeah. So the Burton Union, very briefly, is we have 6 650-litre barrels.
I was going to ask, were they always in sets of 6, or is that
much bigger?
Much.
So these came from a set of 120.
Right, okay.
One set. So you'd maybe have 60s, 120s, 240s. The building that these barrels came from was as big as this whole warehouse, and it was just filled with Burton Unions. They had nearly 400 unions across 2 rooms. So we've got a small section of it, which is manageable for us, because at 650 litres per barrel, we've got about 40 hectolitres of capacity,
Yeah.
which we brew 50 hectolitres, so it works out pretty well.
Yeah.
We'll brew a beer on the main Riverside kit, cast that into a normal fermenter, and then 12 to 18 hours later, when we're starting to get to high Krausen, we'll transfer into the feeder trough,
Yep.
which is up here. The feeder trough feeds down these side rods and fills the barrels.
So each one of these 6 barrels is connected, or 3 on each side,
Yeah.
is connected to the feeder tank
Yeah.
via this pipe.
Side rod.
Yeah.
That will then flow into the barrels, they'll fill up, and then we have what are called swan necks.
Yeah.
The swan necks are on the top of the barrel and go into the top trough. It's like a big bath across the top. As the fermentation happens, you get CO2 production, you get vigorous fermentation, it pushes yeast and some wort up the swan necks and into the top trough.
Yep.
That top trough is slightly tilted so that the yeast probably remains up top and the wort will flow into the feeder trough to go back down the side rods, back into the barrels. So you have this continuously recirculating fermentation.
And the barrels are interconnected.
Exactly, yeah.
Yeah.
We have some control over the flow with these valves. If you run the flow too quickly, you can see too much yeast coming out of the barrels,
Yeah.
and then you'll have a stalled fermentation.
Yeah, because there's not enough yeast
Yeah.
left in the barrel.
They're great for separating yeast. The
Yeah.
Union creates really nice bright beer. So if you do that too quickly and too early, you will have
Yeah.
a stalled ferm. If you have it too slow, you've just got 6 fermenting barrels and you have no recirculation, and that's part of the Union process too.
Yeah.
So you've got to get it just right, and then you get this drip, drip, drip you'll see up the top of yeast and Krausen and stuff dropping out. So we've got to tweak that so it's correct. We have a little bit of temperature control. So these hoses, we just cool it with cold water.
Yeah.
Each
So-
of them
Yeah, so inside the barrel here, there's a stainless steel coil,
copper.
copper coil.
Yeah.
Got it.
Copper coil in there, water in, water out.
Yeah.
When we first got the barrels, the water came in number 1, out and into number 2, out and into number 3, back into the main, which meant the first barrel got all of the cooling.
Yeah.
The last barrel got almost no cooling.
Yeah.
So you would have very different fermentation temperatures across barrels. So what we did, the first modification, is we had each barrel have independent cooling.
Yeah.
So we can chill them all to have the same fermentation temperature. I think over 120 barrels, having the system they had wouldn't have made much difference because you've got a much larger volume, maybe it's all a bit more homogeneous. But if we have an extremely hot fermentation on one barrel, it's going to throw off the entire batch. So
Yeah.
maybe that's why they got away with it, but we want to control that fermentation temperature.
One really interesting point is obviously the yeast choice that you're using on this.
Yeah.
It's going to be hugely important. Does it happen that your house yeast strain is working well on this, or
Yeah.
are you using a separate yeast? Or
So it's our normal Cascale strain,
Yeah.
and it's working really, really well on the Union. It flocks out quite nicely, gives the right kind of flavours for this kind of beer. The Union is really good for strong, dark, traditional styles. We have done some hoppy beers on it, but it's all about malt forward, traditional styles on the Union. It seems to suit those really well, and our Cascale strain suits those really well. Nice and fruity.
yeah,
And we've had some of the fun has been our normal pitching rate. Obviously, when you're dropping wort from the top into a barrel, there's a lot of splashing.
yeah,
So we oxygenate it in the brew house. 12 to 18 hours later, it gets a bit of a second dose of oxygen.
got it.
So we have to decide whether we go low on the oxygen up there, assuming a second,
Yeah,
or we live with the extra biomass created by the second oxygenation, the more vigorous fermentation. All of those things are things to think about when using the Union. But our yeast, yeah, suits it perfectly.
looking at the product that's coming off of here, what sort of nuances in flavour, or are you finding much difference in the flavour of the beers that are coming off here?
Yeah, absolutely. So the very first beer we did on the Union was Jaipur,
Yeah,
because we brew so much Jaipur, we know exactly how
we
it
know
tastes.
it's literally inside out.
Exactly.
Yeah.
So a great way to see how the Union affects the beer was to do a Jaipur brew. And then we can taste them side by side, and we can put them in front of the brewers and say, can you pick a difference? Why is it different? Things like that. And we found that the Jaipur was a lot softer, a lot rounder, slightly less bitter. That might be to do with the extra yeast, taking some of that bitterness away.
Right.
But it was a different type of bitterness as well. It was Jaipur, but it was distinctly different to normal Jaipur. So that was really interesting. And I think we found that through that, we know we want to maybe aim a little bit higher on the bitterness than we normally would, so it maybe softens out to the level we want for the specification. But yeah, they're very round, very full, very beers that like suit that style. So bitters, milds, all that kind of thing. They taste great from the Union.
Talking about full, so that full flavour, I had a pint of Union in one of the local pubs last night, and it was served really, really well by the pub. But the beer was absolutely stunning and really full mouthfeel, but really rounded and really full flavour. It was absolutely delicious.
Yeah. It's really hard to put your finger on the specific flavour, isn't it?
Yeah.
Because it's not, we're all very used now to picking out tropical notes from hops. A lot of the dialogue around beer flavours around like the hops that you use and citrus or resin and things like that. And I think now we're really starting to see how yeast affects it a lot more, and that the yeast and the Union is driving the flavour here as much as anything else.
You won't believe this, but actually there's a home brewer who has built one of these on a smaller scale, and I think that linking that to this, seeing what we've learnt about this and seeing his version is going to be really interesting. I'm sure you'll be really interested in it too.
Brave guy.
Yeah, yeah. But what a lot of fun.
Yeah, absolutely. I think it's something, because once you get the way it works down, you can do it on a small scale, you can do it on a large scale.
Yeah.
And I think it's something nice to see, you know. It's everyone's hobby, everyone's passion, and in this you can see the movement of beer, the fermentation, you can see the drops. It's a bit of a spectacle as well.
Yeah, definitely.
So,
yeah, what a showpiece.
yeah, exactly.
That's been awesome. Thanks very much, Ben.
You're welcome.
Thank
nice
you.
to meet you.
That brings our time in Bakewell to an end, but before we head home, we're making a quick pit stop in Staffordshire. We're off to visit Richard from Wheatlow Brewery, a customer and dedicated homebrewer who's taken things to a whole new level. From custom setups to bold experiments, his shed is like no other homebrewing space we've ever seen. Let's check it out.
Mr. Richard Bagley, absolutely delighted to be invited here in the amazing Staffordshire countryside on such a wonderful day. This is homebrewing gone absolutely crazy. We see homebrewers of all shapes and sizes with loads of different ideas within the hobby, but this is completely off the scale. Where did it all start?
Well, it started, I suppose, like most homebrewers, making my own kit, plastic bucket, old Burco boiler, and Graham Wheeler's old book, How to Brew Your Own Real Ale at Home. And that was 30 years ago. And over the years, I've had various phases of enthusiasm and gaps as well in homebrewing. But this full-blown midlife crisis that I've got now is the latest version, and yeah, I think that there's so much more information and equipment available now for homebrewing, and better books, better YouTube channels, and the equipment that you can get means that you can do so much more, and everything's more available, and you don't have to make it yourself, although sometimes we do.
Wow, we will get onto this, but we are obviously in an enthusiastic stage of your brewing career right now. We've got a fully fledged bar here, we've got a cool-in room, we've got cask tilters, we've got the whole shebang here. What an amazing setup.
Well, it was either that or buy a push bike, so.
We've got a basically a one-barrel brew house here, fully automated.
Yeah, bought this second-hand from eBay. It's a one American barrel plant, so it's just under 120 litres, and it makes for a nice bit of shiny stainless steel, hence the reason why it's kind of turned into a tap room where you can see where the beer's made and so on. And it makes brew day nice and easy, and a decent capacity, 120 litres.
So we're just on our way back from Thornbridge, and obviously it's all been in the brewing headlines about the Thornbridge saving the Union Set. I think this is probably a homebrewing world first, because I don't know of anybody else that's made their own Union Set. What an amazing setup.
The actual inspiration for this kit came from Thornbridge acquiring their Union Set, because their Union Set consists of 6 barrels like this one does. As I mentioned, the brew length's 120 litres, so that is 6 pins. And I thought that would work well in a homebrew setting, albeit slightly at the larger end. I guess the idea of a Union Set is to clarify the beer, to remove the yeast and so on and leave it in the top tray, but also I think very important is the interaction between the yeast and the air and the oxygen. And I must say, it's something as a home brewer with constantly sealed vessels and don't let any oxygen into anything, that you're very nervous about to have open fermentation. But inside the top tray you've got the natural CO2 lying as a sort of cover in there because it's heavier than air, and you've got the froth itself
acting as a protectant.
It almost sets, the froth does, and it acts as a kind of lid over the beer which is flowing underneath it.
Individual heating and cooling on each pin.
Yeah, so I do remember when there was some discussions with Thornbridge when they got the system, they said that they'd adapted it somewhat from Marston's, and they wanted to make sure that each individual cask had individual temperature control. So that's what we've done here. There's a thermo well in there, and each cask has a heat band and a cooling coil, which is just a piece of 3/8 pipe inside to keep it at the right temperature.
And all controlled by a large glycol chiller and inkbirds.
Yeah, so it takes up a lot of capacity having 6 cooling coils. And, but yeah, it's I can understand why big breweries have phased them out, because there's a lot of work and a lot of cleaning and a lot of maintenance, and things tend to drip and leak and need putting right. But it's a lot of fun, and to see active fermentation, to see the yeast actually working. Yeah, this is the second run out for this Union Set. So this is a Yorkshire bitter in this time. The last time we did an attempt at Bass in the Union Set, which was traditionally brewed in there till I think 1982 on the commercial level. And
how did you get on? How did the beer taste?
Well, I'm hoping you'll tell me in a minute, because we'll have a taste of it. Excellent. But and we can do a comparison against one that hasn't been done in the Union Set as well. Because if it's a lot of trouble to do a Union Set, clean it, put it together and use it, then we need to know whether it's making a discernible difference between normal fermentation in a uni-tank or in the Union Set. And
well, as experiments go, this is quite a big one on a homebrew scale. I can't wait to taste that in just a little while. Yeah. Well, this is absolutely amazing. We've got 4 beers in front of each of us, and actually it really is giving me ideas of perhaps not quite to that extent, but a possible recreation of that, possibly in a more simple way. Do you think it's possible?
Yeah, definitely. I've thought about it, and you wouldn't, although I'm using 6 pins, a pin is the perfect size of roughly 20 litres for a homebrew batch. So there's no reason why you couldn't make a Union Set with 1 pin, 1 top tray and 1 feeder tray, because the principle of the beer going up the spout, into the top tray, going across the feeder tray and back into the cask, it can be done with 1 cask, with 2, 3, whatever. Yeah. So I don't see why it couldn't be tried, and it would be a lot easier than putting 6 together.
Okay, so we got 4 beers in front of us.
Yeah.
4 different beers in front of us here, served from your amazing bar with 6 handfuls. Let's get into these beers.
I thought you'd never ask, Rob. I've never sat so long in front of a pint and not touched it.
Right, okay, what end are we starting from?
Well, you've got A's on your left, B, C, D.
Awesome.
I'm not telling you what they are, but I will tell you what they are in terms of what you're looking for. So one beer is real Bass. So I've bought a cask of proper Bass, put it in the cellar, tapped it, put it through the hand pull. Another beer is the Union Set beer that we've brewed here. So the recipe that I've developed after many failures is put through the Union Set and fermented like that. Then to get a control to compare it to a normal fermentation, we harvested the yeast from the Union Set and brewed it another batch in the uni tank.
Right.
and then we split that batch in the cask, some just as it is, and another in we're adding some whole leaf dry hop in the cask.
I'll get the traditional fashion, straight into the cask.
Because anecdotally, Bass casks used to have leaf hops in them back in the day. So what you need to do, Rob, is taste these 4 beers and tell me which is the real Bass, which is the Union Set Bass, and which is the dry hop Bass.
Nothing like being put on the spot then, yeah? Yeah, this is going to be really interesting to taste these beers. I'm not going to delay any longer.
Why not? Cheers.
Cheers. That's absolutely pin bright.
Yeah.
So just while we're trying these, can you give us a bit of a lowdown on the actual recipe that you've used? Yeah,
so I did a bit of research, going back into the books and things, and to cut a long story short, because you do get some rabbit holes where, for example, American books that talk about Bass are talking about a totally different export bottled beer and things like that. So we decided that there was some authority for them using halcyon pale malt. So it's 85% halcyon pale malt, and Crystal 150, which I think is about 9%. And then
that's quite a lot. That's quite a high percentage, isn't it?
Yeah, but that was just to get 26 units of colour.
Yeah.
And then in order to get a Bass has a sort of sweetness in the mouth, and then the hoppy bitterness comes later, almost after you've swallowed. So to try and get some of that sweetness in, we decided to use a liquid malt extract, because a lot of the old-fashioned brewers often use some kind of malt extract or syrup, whether it was to save money or for the taste. And so we took a guess, really, that maybe they did that. And it certainly helped kick fermentation off as well. For the hops, really simple: Challenger North Down, 26 units of bitterness, 19 units of colour.
Okay.
Sorry. So yeah, 26 units of bitterness. Whole leaf hops, though, we changed to, because we wanted to get that softer, rounder character.
Yeah.
And the other thing, Rob, to talk about is the water. I know it's your absolute favourite thing.
We were doing so well.
So try not to fall asleep. So, RO water. But then we need to Burtonise it. Now, and during my research, I realised that there's more than one Burton water. Apparently, there's shallow well, there's deep well, and it go in the history of Burton, as the town industrialised, the water got worse quality near the surface, so they dug deeper wells, and it actually changed the mineral content. And a lot of people say, if you look at a Burton water profile, the amount of gypsum in it is absolutely is just ridiculous. Over 600 parts per million on the sulfates. So, which one's the real Bass, Rob?
Right, that's the real Bass. Now, I say that for a couple of reasons, and blind tastes are extraordinarily difficult. But the reason that I'm saying that is the original Bass is because certain things that we've done at Malt Miller HQ recently, where we've been trying to recreate beers, we know that on a smaller scale, you usually end up with more flavour. Now, each one of these 3 have got more flavour than this one, although it's a really drinkable beer. It's just got less mouthfeel than the other 3. So that's going to be my Bass.
Okay. And then which one do you think's the Union Set beer?
This one. I'm just going by how creamy the mouthfeel is on this one. It stands out from it definitely stands out from this one, but it also stands out from these 2. It's got a more creamy mouthfeel to it. Although I don't know if I can get some dry hop nature out of that as well, so that's tricky.
Oh, that's the next question.
It might be the dry hop that's giving it the creamy nature, I don't know.
Yeah, so which one are you going for on the dry hop then?
This one.
Okay, shall I tell you the answers?
Go on then.
The answers are, you were right, A is real Bass, B is the Union Set.
Is it?
C is dry hop, which you almost got, and D is the normal fermentation. 25%.
Yeah.
But I'm glad that I did appreciate the reasons why you thought that was real.
Yeah.
Something else interesting, at least to someone like me, was that the dry hop and the non-dry hop was the same batch of beer from the same fermenter. They both went into cask at the same time. One had a handful of hops and one didn't. The one with the hops in has attenuated less in the cask than the one without the hops. So D attenuated more without hops in than C did with hops in. Why that would be, I don't know.
Answers on a postcard. So when you're talking about dry hopping a 20 litre tin, like a handful.
Yeah, I think it was
like a traditional handful.
I think it was 5 grams or something, not much.
Oh really? Yeah, okay.
Just literally for me a pinch.
What an amazing experiment to do, and to have the facility to be able to carry out that experiment.
Yeah, it's a bit eccentric.
No, it's not. It's just like
fun to do. And when we're going to have a few friends around tomorrow, do tasting and ask everyone to answer those same questions. For me, there's two sort of questions now. Is can we really sort of see, even now you know, can you see the benefit of the Union Set in this kind of beer?
Yes, I can. There's a definite taste difference between these beers. That's much more marked than the taste difference between the beers that you've brewed here. Whether I could say one is a favourite or not, I don't know. But I think what it's proved is, using the Union Set, there's a difference between those beers.
Yeah.
Absolutely, without a doubt.
Absolutely. And the other thing that I'm reasonably pleased with is that after many years of trying to brew Bass, and it's never tasted anything like it at all, these at least do seem quite similar to the real Bass.
As we all know, cloning a beer is extraordinarily difficult. And to get it this close is highly impressive. Just one last point. Let's do the sparkler, no sparkler.
Well, of course, there's a tradition around here where every
because we're not
we're on the borderline.
Yeah, we are.
And so Bass drinkers have got an internal argument about this. So every pub around here used to be a Bass house back in the day, either a tied house or a voluntary one. Just everyone sold and drank Bass, and the two local pubs, the Green Man and the Red Lion, both of those pubs, in my drinking memory, you'd walk in and they would have one cask behind the bar with wet towels on it, and they'd also have one on hand pull coming from the cellar with the sparkler on. So it wasn't just a question of sparkler, no sparkler, it was, do you want it direct from the cask or through the hand pull and the sparkler?
Through the hand pull and the sparkler every time.
Yeah, I would say so. I'm a sparkler man. It's a long-term debate with drinkers, isn't it?
Richard, to be invited here, see this amazing setup, for us to be able to check out the Union and show that to our viewers has been absolutely fantastic. Thank you very much.
Okay, very welcome. We've enjoyed your company, and it's always nice to taste a few beers with.
Well, they are when they're as good as this.
Well, so yeah, it's been great, and we have got a few more we could taste.
Goes without saying that we'll stay for a while, yeah? Thank you.
And that brings our time at Thornbridge to a close. We're leaving full to the brim with knowledge, inspiration, and maybe a few pints. In part 4, we're heading back to Malt Miller HQ to bring everything together and take on the challenge of recreating Jaipur ourselves. How close can we get to this iconic beer? We'll soon find out.